right, let's get started. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. There's a lot of great sessions going on, including lunch. So I appreciate you delaying your hunger gratification and joining us, hanging out with us for a little bit today. I'm David Berry. I lead up one of the business intelligence groups for the Home Depot out of the Houston office.
Chase Zeman, lead up the data science function out of the Houston office.
All right, so let's get started. So our agenda today, I will walk you through. Secret sauce or bleeding costs. So we'll get into how our philosophy of the customer is always right started to kind of backfire, catch up to us a little bit, causing some issues. We'll go through how we solve the problem with data. So how did we throw resources, throw technology, throw information, throw minds at the problem and solve it with a data-driven approach. We'll go through some of the KPIs that we developed and our journey, our roadmap. We'll go through descriptive analytics, which is my bread and butter. I'll take you through that, how we solved it for not only internal stakeholders, but external stakeholders, so our vendors. Chase will walk you through the prescriptive analytics and the machine learning aspects of how we took this data and applied it to our business. And obviously, we'll end it with some actions and outcomes. So what did this data teach us? How did we use it to influence business results? And obviously, we'll end it with a quick Q&A. So I'm going to hand it over to Chase right now to talk a little bit about the business model.
Right, so at an aggregate level, just to kind of level set in terms of the architecture of Home Depot, obviously the headquarters, which we call our store support center, is in Atlanta. Outside of Atlanta, there are 3 technology hubs, one of which is in Houston, second is Austin, third is in Portland. What we do in Houston is all around configurable products. So Home Depot acquired a company called Global Custom Commerce back in 2013. And Global Custom Commerce is a holding or at the time, was a holding company for 4 different blinds companies, Blinds.com, JustBlinds.com, AmericanBlinds.com, and Blinds.Canada. Now, when Home Depot made this acquisition, they weren't just trying to buy a blinds company, they were trying to buy they were buying a proprietary technology of selling hard-to-buy complex products online. So now, we slowly spend a little less of our time on core blinds, and we're developing the configurable technologies for all of the other hard-to-buy products on Home Depot in an e-commerce space, such as sheds, rugs, countertops, kitchen cabinets, etc., irrigation systems. So that's kind of the background of who we are in Houston in terms of Home Depot. The purpose of this, the scope of this presentation will be on an application that we applied to the blinds business. So Blinds.com, over 30,000 5-star reviews, 22 years in business. We make up around 4% of Home Depot's e-commerce business as a whole. So we sell a lot of blinds. So going forward, buying a complex configurable product online is a cumbersome task for the customer. There's a lot of worry, there's a lot of angst. So around 4 years ago, what we implemented, and this is before Dave and I were at the company, but the company implemented a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. So if you buy the product and it gets to your door and you don't like it, we'll remake it for you at 0 cost to you. Now, this is twofold. Number one, obviously, it's going to increase buyer confidence, it's going to increase conversion rate, it's going to increase sales, which was the goal of the 100% satisfaction guarantee. However, there's obviously a downturn to that, and that is all of the costs that the company incurs for all of these remakes. So over time, these costs are creeping up, and it's a bad cost. It's a bad cost for the business. It's a bad customer experience. There's nothing good about remaking a product. So Dave is going to walk you through the long-term journey that we have went through to essentially minimize these remake costs over time.
Yeah, so we'll start with a quote that really kind of encapsulates the whole problem. So if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? Right? I think this applies to a lot of different places. Data, right? It sounds like something you tell your kids, right? Do it right the first time so you don't have to go back and do it over, but it's applicable. And it's really kind of helped us anchor this entire project as we moved forward. Just keeping with that philosophy, we developed 2 KPIs that were important to the business. The first one being first time right, so FTR scores. So an FTR score measures a frictionless customer experience. Okay, so it's a binary flag on every single line item that we sell on every single order. It's, did we screw it up? Did we not screw it up? 1 or 0. It's comprised of 4 different categories or 4 different metrics within the one score. So it's production time. So we ask ourselves the question, did we ship it to you on time? We told you you were going to get it in 5 days. Did you get it in 5 days? Yes or no? Remake rate. So Chase talked a little bit about remake rate, and we'll get into it in a little bit. But basically, did we have to remake it? Credit rate. So credit rate is the third component. So did we have to refund you any money because of your customer experience? And then the fourth one is customer service calls. Did you have to call us? Obviously, anytime you have to call a customer service post-order, it's usually not a good experience, so we included it as part of this score. And then remake rate. So that first time right was our first KPI, our first key result, and remake rate was our second. So obviously it's comprised within the FTR score, but we really wanted to drill into this because this was the specific use case for the entire project. There was a lot of internal friction around this one about how we were going to measure it. Should it be cost? Should it be at a customer level? Should it be at an order level? Ultimately, we decided that it should be at a unit level. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to dissect it in many different ways. So being at the unit level, we can drill into remake rate by product, by category, by color, by size, by option, right? Cord, cordless, you name it. Anything about the blind, we can drill into a remake rate for that product. By doing it at like a higher level, like a customer aggregation, you just simply wouldn't be able to do it. So that's the remake rate. So, and this will take you through a little bit of our journey, right? So we started with a problem. How are we going to solve it? It really took an organizational-wide engagement, really, starting at the top, right? So we had to get senior leaders engaged in this project because there was a lot that goes into it. It's not just something you can create, right? You can't create data. You have to actually make it happen. So we started off with Autobahn in March of 2016. So obviously, you can see this is a pretty long timeline, right? We were dedicated to this project. That's also when Chase and I started with Blinds.com, April, shortly thereafter. So Autobahn is our proprietary platform that Chase spoke to a little bit before. It's the reason Home Depot keeps us around. It's our configurable technology. The next thing was in September, we launched what's called the Route 66 project. So by the way, our CIO is like obsessed with cars, so every project that we do is kind of car-themed or road-themed. Route 66 project, it gave us the ability to link a remake back to the original order. Okay, so not only from a technology standpoint did we need to get engineering, the Autobahn team, right, to make that happen from the tech side, it also took, building a new UI for our customer service folks. So the people who are actually going to go in, create the remake order for the customer. So building out that UI, changing all their processes, it was a big story. Vroom launched, which gave us a little bit more in visibility into cost. In May, we did an analytics blueprint, basically define the KPIs, first time right score, remake rate, how are we going to actually do it, defining data dictionaries, database architecture, setting up like our BI sandbox, make sure that we have all the resources and the capabilities and the access to do so. And obviously just some quick dashboard layouts. Okay, what are we going to do with all this data? VPT completed in 2017. So VPT is our vendor performance tracking project. Basically what it was is a all-encompassing suite of data that allows us to drill into remake rate, customer or first time right, customer service calls, kind of connecting all the dots basically. It's our big data set. And then obviously in April 2018, earlier this year, Pod kicked off, and that's Chase's baby, and he will talk a little bit about it in more detail later on. But Pod is problem order detection. So. All right, descriptive analytics. So we have this brand new data set and all this data. What do we do with it, right? We have to expose it to the business. Let's expose it to the business through 2 different ways. So we talk about our internal stakeholders. Tableau server, to this point, prior to September of 2017, when we really completed the project, it was primarily focused on our contact center. So everything in Tableau server was around sales calls, customer service calls, a lot of good dashboards, agent performance, great, robust kind of environment, but it was very narrowly focused. So what this allowed us to do was we built out brand new projects for our merchandising teams, our supply chain teams, our marketing teams, right? If you include visit funnels, clickstream metrics, everything like that goes into some of these dashboards. So you can see just some screenshots for our internal stakeholders. All right, and then the external before that. What this allowed us to do too, so when we talked about prior to this launch was very narrowly focused with the CEC, or the Customer Engagement Center, or Contact Center. Once we rolled out to a broader audience, obviously, it allowed us to kind of create that data-driven culture that we were always after. So when Chase and I were brought on back in March of 2016, that was always the goal. Like, how do we get more data-driven? How do we make smarter decisions across the business? By utilizing Tableau, rolling out the server to a broader audience, allowed us to do that. So we do it through two different ways. So boots on the ground. My team is very engaged. We go through BI office hours every Tuesday, where people can come in, ask questions about the dashboards, new ideas. We do sprint reviews, so every Tuesday we work on an agile development method. I don't know if you guys are familiar. So every other Tuesday in the stadium, we sit in front of a big screen like this and present all of our dashboards to the business. So how do you use it? How do you interact with it? What are the different filters you can use, right? So it allows people from different parts of the organization to see what we're working on for other teams. So not only do we get, story approval from the person who actually requested it, but it also kind of gives other people insights into what's out there. We do Tableau roadshows and data for the people. Data viz playgrounds. So what we did was using the web edit feature, publish specific approved, BI approved data sources, right? And let them kind of go in and web edit. So giving kind of just your normal analyst or your data consumer the ability to kind of get to play around with it a little bit, which obviously increased adoption. So adoption, right? So by doing this, we grew our user base by 4 times. So nearly 70% of all associates in the Houston office have an Interactor license. Concurrent user growth, we see it constantly going up. 55% of people log in every single day, and 83% of people log in with every 5 days. So great adoption, great engagement. We see it across the business. It's really helped us out. So external facing stuff. All right, so our external customers are our vendors in this scenario. So how did we give them the access or the insights into their business, right? So it's great that we gave it to our merchandising team, our supply chain team, but how do we kind of get the data in the hands of the people who are going to influence the most and kind of, again, create that do it right the first time mentality? So I'm going to take you through our vendor scorecard. So there's a screenshot of it here, but I will walk you through it in Tableau. All right. Can everybody see that? Maybe? No? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Maybe I won't walk you through it. Maybe I will. There we go. Awesome. All right. Just a reset, right? Unplug it, plug it back in. All right. So this is our dashboard that we send out. We send it out in a package workbook every week to our vendors. And what it allows them to do is to drill into their metrics. Okay. So it's designed specifically for each vendor in mind. It's all row-level permissions. This is our internal version, so we have drop down to pick a different vendor. They don't have that. But basically, you can go through your different date ranges. You can go through your different vendors. It's designed with intent, a specific intent in mind. So a lot of our vendors are not necessarily tech-savvy people, right? So they know how to make great blinds, but they not necessarily know what Tableau is. So we had to introduce them to Tableau, right? We had to give them some nice PowerPoints, some pretty PDFs around how to download Tableau Reader, the free software, to be able to consume the reports and all that. But we still don't get necessarily 100% adoption. So a lot of people don't necessarily open it in Tableau and interact with it. Now, it's a lot cooler, right, if you do. But we design it in a way where you can just print it out in a PDF, and it still gives you a lot of context into your business. So you'll see it's very text-heavy, right? We normally wouldn't design a dashboard for internal use that's this text-heavy. But basically, it just describes every kind of compartment of the report. It's very clearly laid out. It's in a portrait, kind of landscape or portrait orientation, so you can print it out as a PDF. We actually, when we send out the attachment, we also send out a PDF version of the attachment. So here, we'll go through a little bit. We have our sold units. So sold units, first-time right scores, remake rates, right? Giving them the visibility into the core metrics that we're judging them on. How do they judge themselves? So sold units, they pretty much know how many units they sell, so we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel here. But really the first-time right scores, because they don't know, if a customer calls in, if we have to refund the money, if it's a remake. So what we did is through, some interactive tooltips, visualizations, trending scores, things like that, they can kind of get a better sense of how they're doing. First-time right's a big score. Remake rate, right, with a viz and tooltip, just demonstrating the reason why it had to be remade. So in a nice tree map. Promise met, production time, right? So we give them a snapshot in the viz or in the tooltip of a viz that every product that didn't achieve 100%, what was the score? So obviously we didn't want to show every product there that had 100% because those aren't the ones that you need to focus on. So every product that did not garner 100%, we'll pop it here and they can kind of drill in. Here it's all interactive, right? You can click on specific products, it drills down to that specific product. So just giving them the visibility and giving them the interactive feel of Tableau. Down here we have, touchscreen's not working. So continue through the viz, right? We have order processing, so this basically just spells out all the penalties that they may be occurring for that fiscal period or year to date if they choose.
Maybe talk a little bit about the rewards and penalties.
Yeah, so rewards and penalties. So in order to hold them accountable, right, we don't like to do this, but we had to enforce penalties to make sure that they're keeping our customers in mind and providing the best experience. So what we did was we have a set of penalties that are tied to each one of these KPIs. So PO confirmation. So when we send them an order, do they tell us that they got the order, right? So it's all done through EDI. I don't know if you guys are familiar. So we send an order to them. Did you get it? Yes. Tell us you got it, and we'll give you a thumbs up on that one. Shipping notifications. Did you ship out the product? Tell us that you shipped it out with the tracking number. This vendor does very well on that. They do it 100% of the time. No penalties. An error-free transmission just means basically the normal cadence through the EDI. Order fulfillment. So that's the big one with the production times. Is it late? Is it slightly late? Is it late, or is it very late? So obviously they have different levels of penalties, right? So a slightly late, 1 to 2 days, 2%, late, 5%, and very late, which is 10 plus days, is a 10% penalty just for that specific line item. Okay, so it's not at like an entire invoice. We're not taking 10% of their invoice away. It's just for that specific order. What they have the ability to do too is we cap their penalties based on their trending first-time right score. So obviously down through here, you can see the trending non-compliance. They can pick their different reasons. The bar chart will update, things like that. But down here, we have a first-time right score, and we kind of popped this graphic a little bit earlier in the presentation. But what it does is it caps their penalties. So if they're normally a good vendor, they just had an off month, we're not going to completely just penalize them out the wazoo. We're going to have a cap on how much we can actually penalize them because they're our vendors. We want to work with them, right? We don't want to create unnecessary conflict. At the end of the day, this is intended to be a customer-facing, let's everybody do right for the customer thing. So we set a maximum of 3% on their entire invoice. But if they garner good first-time right scores, they can actually get incentives. So if they're trending at a 60-day first-time right score of 95% or above, we actually give them more money. So it'll be like a 1-2% kick on their invoice. So they have the ability to win, right? And we give them that ability. So, all right, we'll head back to the presentation. Hopefully this works. All right, I'll hand it over to Chase.
All right, so as Dave was mentioning earlier, it's obviously a value pyramid of analytics, so to say. So it's a longer-term initiative in regard to understanding remakes, creating the data infrastructure, and the connections between the remakes and the orders so that we can design the descriptive analytics suite of dashboarding capabilities to understand why we're incurring these remake costs. And then the next logical step is, okay, let's go ahead and predict that a remake is going to happen before it happens. And then even further, how do we even prevent that order from even happening, and really get in front of the problem from the customer UI, UX perspective, and really just creating a better customer journey. So what we did, we designed an ensemble machine learning algorithm. My background is in rare event modeling, did a lot of detection of terrorist financing and money laundering. So, this is kind of my bread and butter. Rare event, I'll say anything less than 5%. So around 3% of our orders get remade. So what we actually, we have our architecture here. So you have blinds.com on the left, all of the data from blinds.com in regard to clickstream data. So literally the raw events happening on the website, every single click. All of our historical customer data. What do I know about you? Have you ordered from us before? Are you a pro? Do you spend $500,000 with us a year, or is this your first purchase ever with us? Did you look at the measuring instructions? Blinds are hard to buy online. If you called the call center, our customer engagement center, how good is this salesperson? Does this salesperson have a high remake rate or a low remake rate? Are they good at selling shutters, or are they bad at selling cellular shades? So all of these data sets are all merging together to determine the probability at the end of the day if the order is going to be remade. So as you can imagine, in regard to all of the clickstream data, all of the customer data, all of the CEC call center data, all of the promotional cadence. Is this the last day of a promo? You hit the website, you only looked at 4 pages, you called the call center, the phone call was only 3 minutes long, and you purchased a $5,000 order. I can guarantee you with like 98% confidence that order is going to be remade. So all of this data is coming together, millions of permutations, and we're self-learning every day. So at the bottom, you can kind of see a very macro level overview of how the algorithm works. So it's a combination of supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So common in rare event modeling is to take your rare events, so all of the situations where we have had remakes in the past, and let's categorize them. So let's go ahead and create these clusters of different scenarios of known problem orders in the past. And then we'll actually take that and we'll seed it, and we'll have another clustering algorithm that basically has these known events as seeds, and then all of the observations are flowing through that clustering algorithm. I kind of think of it as a filtration hierarchy. So at the top, if you think of these nets, you have the net at the top that is just like very high level, big holes that are looking for just known problems. The situation I was talking about earlier, last day of the promo, called in, 2-minute phone call, etc. We probably want to follow up with that customer. And then it kind of goes a level deeper. So we have, our clustering side, we have our random forest side, which is also looking for aggregate known problems as well. And then at the end of the day, we're going to kind of blend everything together based upon like 4 different algorithms. We're actually going to take the probabilities out of all of those, and we shove them into a logistic regression. And we know based upon other parameters as well, based upon seasonality, based upon promo, etc., this algorithm may perform better in this situation than another algorithm. So we actually have the output of the algorithms in a logistic regression that comes out with the overall probability for the order to be remade. So what do we do with it? We rank the orders based upon the expected cost to the business. At the end of the day, you can ask, what is the most effective manner to judge an algorithm? There's like 50 different KPIs out there. It's sensitivity, specificity, true positive, all these things. At the end of the day, all that matters is money. Are we driving revenue and cutting cost? So that's how we rank the output. So we have the expected cost, assuming the order would be remade, and we have the probability that it's going to be remade. We multiply those two, that's our expected cost to the business. And we have an investigation team that literally goes through orders all day, every day, And if they can get through 147 one day or 50 the next day, it doesn't matter. They're just risk ranked for our investigation team to contact the customer, to listen to the call, to review the order, etc. And we also are sending automated communications to the CEC to improve our salesperson performance. So as an example that I said earlier, maybe Trey is great at selling shutters and Dixie is terrible at selling cellular shades. So maybe we should get Dixie some coaching on selling that product better so that we can incur less costs as an overall business. And then also we're looking at currently going through prioritization is sending automated communications to the customer. As an example, if a 36 by 60 is a very common size for a window. So 36 by 60 is going to be a window that looks like this. Now, if you accidentally put 60 by 36, maybe you just mixed it up. So why do we need to contact you? Why do we need to do any of that? Let's create a frictionless experience and send an automated email to you that say, hey, John Smith, I saw that you put your measurements in. Does your window look like this, or does it actually look like this? Please just click, and we'll go ahead and update your order automatically in a frictionless experience. So, I'm kind of excited about this. We're all data nerds here. I love what I do. In the space of online blinds and technology, we're actually looking at marketing our capabilities from an analytics side of things, saying that we have superior technology versus our competitors. You can have buyer confidence by shopping with us because we have technology that's going to make sure that your order is correct. So, a little bit of the examples of things that we can detect. I mentioned data earlier that we're bringing in. So top left, so on the left side we have internal errors, and on the right side we have customer errors. So if you think of a remake can happen for various reasons. The customer could be negligent and they had an error in their process of buying, or it could be an internal error. Bad UX website design, bad descriptions. It could be, as an example, in the top left. If for the women in here, if you've been in a wedding, they always say buy all the bridesmaids' dresses from the same dye lot. Well, dye lots are in fabrics, so from a blinds perspective, when the vendor changes their dye lot, it's very possible that we could be sending samples to a customer that they ordered that look like X, and then the product shows up and it looks like Y because the sample and the product are from different dye lots. So we're actually giving insights into our vendors, and we'll be able to detect when they're changing their dye lots. And so that's actually an example in the top left. So you can see on the right side in the top left box, the picture on the website is the white, and that's what the product actually looks like. So that's an example of a situation where the vendor changed the dye lot, the whites aren't the same, and we were able to get ahead of the problem, order new samples, fix the problem before it became a huge nuisance to the business. Design consultant metadata, that's what I was speaking about earlier in regard to our salespeople and their specific performance. We have an entire descriptive analytics suite around our salespeople's performance, and all of that data is feeding into the algorithm. Rush purchase experience, so this is the example I was speaking of promo end day, rush purchase experience, probably going to be remade. And then on the right side, all of our customer metadata. So we have all of our customer segmentation algorithms that are running all of our information about our customers, bad measurements in regard to maybe flipping up the length and the width. Also, from a bad measurement side of things, if you order custom blinds and you go, a lot of times what people do is they go measure one window and they say, oh, well, all of my windows are the same. So they measure one and they put the same measurements for all of them. Going to be remade. All of your windows in your house are not the same size. As much as you think they are not. And then at the bottom, problem option configuration. So we're able to detect actually, like as an example, if you do outside mount shutters, So outside mount means that the shutter is going to kind of protrude from the wall and sit over the window. And if you have, within the same room, you have 4 outside mount shutters, you always want to take the maximum height of the largest one and make them all the same, because what will end up happening is even if it's a ½ inch different, you can have another slat, another, what do you call it?
A slat.
Yeah, another slat in the shutter, and then the divider rail could be lower. And so then you install them and they look terrible, so it's going to be remade. So we're able to detect all of these different situations. Now, using Tableau. So we created a data infrastructure and schema for all of our algorithmic output. And we use Tableau to understand our model performance. So if you think about it, at the end of the day, from a supervised learning perspective, you can really have 2 types of output. You're talking about binary, you're talking continuous. So what we have is we have a data infrastructure in our database that essentially just has a tertiary dimension table that says, what is the model ID? What model is this? Tell me all the metadata about this model. Is it a logistic regression? Is it a decision tree? Is it a linear regression, neural net, et cetera? And then based upon that metadata of the model, we're actually going to feed the information into dashboards. And the decisions and the way that Tableau is going to portray the data is going to be based upon what type of algorithm that is. So as an example, if it's a classification algorithm, it's going to show a confusion matrix. If it's a linear regression model, maybe it's going to show some sort of adjusted R-squared inaccuracy over time. So model tuning. So we obviously use Tableau to look at our accuracy. And then from a financial planning perspective, in regard to remake, for the accounting folks in the room, we are going to be incurring cost in future months based upon sales that are occurring currently. So obviously we need to accrue for those costs so the cost structure can hit the top line revenue within the same month. So we're actually using the predictive algorithm that's predicting if the remake is going to happen to predict the costs that we're incurring in the future so that accounting can accrue the correct number of costs. So I'm going to demo.
Yeah, let's try this again here. All right, it worked.
So I'll just give a very high-level overview. This is an example of some output that we use for this specific algorithm. So you can see at the top left, so you can select your period, you can select your cutoff. So we use just a simple parameter to select the cutoff, which is going to feed in based upon from a classification algorithm, you're obviously going to have a continuous probability distribution of output. Now, if you the easiest way to catch all the remakes is to just say everything's a remake, obviously. I caught all of them, but then I have a really big false positive rate. So you can actually change your cutoff and actually understand your model performance in terms of your sensitivity and precision. The remake cost in the top left is what finance looks at. So finance, when the month ends, they're going to go in here, they're going to select the period, and they're going to look at that number and they're going to plug it into all of their financial models and say, this is how much remake costs we're going to incur this month, and you can actually slice by vendor, et cetera. And then you're going to see the classification matrix in the top right, the confusion matrix, sorry. So you can see it's obviously it's a rare event. We are currently catching, for this specific vendor, 64.5% of the remakes. For a rare event, it's pretty solid. And when I say it's a remake, we're correct 63% of the time. So if you think about just on the category of blind specifically, we have about $5 million of raw cost that go into remakes. And so I'm able to catch almost 65% of $5 million. Now, obviously, there's an operational aspect of what do we do with this information now. And we need to prevent the orders from going through, et cetera, which is what we're going through right now. But current year to date, we'll get into it in a little bit, we're upwards of $1 million in raw cost savings. So.
All right, so outcomes, right? So what do we do with all this information, right? Is it actually driving business change? Data is only as good as the actions and the insights that it spurs from, right? It'd be great to just spin up all these great dashboards, everybody looks at them, and at the end of the day, they turn around and walk out, go home, right? Nobody does anything about it. So the outcomes we're actually very proud of. So obviously we exposed insights, led to actions, we took actions, right? So Chase kind of mentioned some of them through the findings of the model, right? So we take colors down from the website, we tell the vendor to change their dye lot. All those different things obviously spur outcomes, and then we measure our KPIs that we defined in the beginning to make sure that we're actually hitting those key results that we first defined. So monthly customer service interactions per order. So this is something that's very important to us, right? Every time somebody has to call, it's not a good experience, but it also is cost for the business. So I think our costs are about every time somebody calls, it's $7. Costs us $7, right? We have to have a button in the seat to answer the call. We have to have the technology, all that, whatever. So decreasing this number is great, right? So last year, right, we saw a reduction of 12% in interactions per order. So we're selling more orders, but we're getting less calls. It's awesome. Annual decline in remake rate. So nearly every single product category has had a decrease in remake rate over the past 12 months. So in overall, we have a 14% reduction versus last year at this point in time. And again, every single product category has a decline. Promise met, production time. So we talked about it a little bit before. This is a component of FTR. We told you we were going to ship it in 5 days. Did we ship it in 5 days? So we can now say that we're meeting our production times 81% of the time on orders. That's a 27% increase over last year. Great performance. And penalty dollars. So this is one that we don't really like to talk about, right? Because every time we have to penalize a vendor, it means they screwed something up. So setting a goal for this is very hard, but we set the bar very low. So we did exceed our goal. But again, at the end of the day, right, we want to hold vendors accountable. And it also adds dollars back to the bottom line, right? Back to the P&L. And machine learning outcomes.
So alluded to some of this earlier. So obviously remake costs, bad costs for the business. Bad customer experience, bad costs for the business, et cetera. Remake rates increasing year over year over year if you look historically, particularly when we implemented the 100% satisfaction guarantee. However, we're putting a dent in it. You know, we're taking $1 million of cost out of the business, and as Dave was mentioning, $7 per call. So every single remake is going to be a call, because you have to call the call center. You have to talk about why the problem occurred, and on average, every single unit that is remade is $80 in raw cost. And obviously, negative impact on customer lifetime value. We want to make a frictionless experience. We want to be the go-to brand if you want to cover your windows in your home. So you can actually see on the right side how this cost saving is broke out. So calls, obviously, you know, it's a small portion, but it makes up money, $7 per call. So 5% of the $1 million is around call reduction. 5% is around DC performance. So DCs are our design consultants. They're the people who are selling the product. And we're giving them insights and information to make them better. And we're seeing, you know, if we can improve not necessarily somebody from, you know, a decent remake rate to a better remake rate, but where we're getting a lot of our bang for our buck, so to say, is taking the bottom performers in certain categories and just moving the needle a little bit. Cancellations, so 5% there. Option removal. So certain things don't look good together. If you buy this color shutter, it doesn't look good with this color hinge. So we're actually going to the dev teams and the IT teams, and we're just removing the capability to even buy that. Obviously, you can special order if you call us, and if you really wanted something specific that wasn't on the website, we can make it happen. We're just removing all the things that we know don't work well together. Change orders. So this is a large bulk. So this is our investigation team that day in and day out, they're taking the output of this algorithm and they are screening the orders, listening to the calls, contacting the customer. It's interesting because originally, so we have an entire department around customer experience, VP of customer experience, and we were thinking when we designed this algorithm, how are we going to go about intervening with these orders? And is a customer that purchased online going to be okay with us calling them because they wanted an online e-commerce experience in the first place. So now, blinds.com is calling me. I don't want to talk to them. But like 99% of the time, you call and you're like, "Hi, Mrs. Jones, our algorithms detected that there may be a problem with your order. Would you mind if I asked you a couple questions?" These people are ecstatic. They're like, "What? You have algorithms? It's a blinds company. Like, what are you even talking about?" Website updates. So we're teaming, and I expect the website updates portion to grow. This algorithm was only designed launched in April. So we have about 6-7 months in. We are constantly, pushing stories and dev ideas to our IT teams to improve the customer experience and the UX of the website to prevent these problem orders. So overall savings, $1 million currently and counting. So why? Another impact. In terms of remakes, there's obviously the internal side and the vendor side. So the vendor can mess it up, or the customer or we messed it up. Now, with the descriptive analytics suite that Dave was showing before, a lot of these vendors don't have analytics teams. They're just, a manufacturing site that's just cranking out blinds. We, through the analytics that we've created, are teaming with our vendors and providing them insights into their business that they had no clue about. So why does that matter? So what ends up happening is a lot of times in the retail space, when you throw these big promotions, let's say 40% off cellular shades as an example. So we're not incurring the entire decrease in revenue on the 40% off. A lot of it is actually vendor supported. And we are aligning our vendor support with our promotions throughout the year. So as an example, one of our large vendors, let's say Levelor, will throw a banner promo and they will support 30% of the 40% off. Well, we're providing them so much insights into their business and helping them do business better that when we go into negotiations for next year, in terms of vendor support, in regard to all of our competitors, they're giving us more support because they want to do business with us. So not only are we providing to our internal stakeholders, our vendors are getting value from the analytics that we're creating. So added vendor support, promo flexibility, et cetera. That's all we had today. Thank you guys for being here. Please be sure to fill out the survey for us, and we'll open the floor up for questions. Pain points. Yeah, data aggregation, ETL staging of semantic layers is obviously a pain point probably for everybody in the building. I would say for the most part, it's just not even having the data. Yep. So a lot of times it's like I would say I spend a third of my time focused on now. I spend a third of my time, obviously like developing people in my team, but then another third of my time is just the long-term strategic initiative to where I want to design algorithm X to do Y, and I don't even have the data right now. So we're having to get in the data creation mindset of teaming with the tagging teams, teaming with the web analytics IT side, to even start creating data so that we can do cool things in the future. That would probably be my biggest thing.
Right, yeah, no, exposing a lot of these insights leads to more questions, right? Whenever you provide somebody with data and a nice clean dashboard that answers questions, it follows up with questions. So as we kind of expose this stuff to different people in the business, they have different ideas. It's like, oh, well, can we look at it by region? It's like, well, we don't have zip code in our data set, so now we have to go back and engineer it. So things like that are always a pain point. It's fun, but it takes time, and it's definitely a pain point.
Yeah, I was curious, so what environment do you use to do your modeling, and how do you integrate that into Tableau? Is it just something you export to the data source and bring in?
So the question is, what do we do most of our modeling in, and how do we integrate with Tableau? So from a back end, so I'll just go through the tech stack. From a back-end perspective, we're mostly GCP, Google Cloud Platform, and BigQuery, and SQL Server. Currently kind of migrating from SQL Server into GCP. From a machine learning perspective, if it's on-prem, we're going to be SAS. If it's cloud, we're going to be Python. And then from a UI, we're obviously Tableau. When I was mentioning earlier, we created a database schema for all of our machine learning algorithms for the output.
Within SQL.
Within
our
SQL.
environment.
So what that allows us to do, though, is prevent, because when you design a new algorithm, what is leadership going to want to know? Number one, how much money is it saving us or creating for us? And number two, how accurate is it? So when we created this infrastructure and schema for our machine learning output, we can create this descriptive analytics suite of Tableau, and then we create a new algorithm, we pump it in that data set, it's the same structure, and the dashboard just works.
Yeah, and that's how we're able to pull it into the second dashboard that we demoed, right? So it's like we attach that model probability back to every single line item in our tables.
So you mentioned the predictive model saves $1 million, and how do you incorporate this into your model? Say, how often do you update the model, and is it like accurate learning and kind of thing?
Yep. So so kind of going back through in terms of me speaking about how the algorithm at a high level is kind of like a filtration system. So the high level large loop nets that are just going to catch the blatant problems, we do a retrain on a quarterly basis. That's the large scale major problems. But all of these smaller nets, so to say, are learning every single day. So every single day when orders are flowing through, what it's essentially going to do is it's going to say, okay, I classified this as not a problem, and it actually was a problem. So as these clusters actually pop up of these false positives, it will create a new cluster and basically automatically seed that into the clustering algorithm for new orders to flow through and detect that problem. So the learning's happening every day. I think you had a question?
Yeah, everything you laid out is really cool, and I think to get to where you need to go, a lot of it has to do really with attributes, either of the order, the customer, the product itself, which a lot of systems, a lot of businesses that have been around that didn't necessarily start within, let's say, the last 5 years or so may not have that robust of transactional systems, or all the product specs might sit in a bill of materials. Some other inventory management system or whatnot. Did you guys have to do anything to, when you're laying out your model, to say, you know what, we're missing X amount of attributes that we actually need to bring into the model, and how did you go about either doing that with additional development or going to different order management platforms or whatnot?
So I'll take the first part of that question. So the question was basically like, how did you uncover the data that you need for the models, right? So if you go back to the slide where we walked you through the journey, it took a lot of stakeholder buy-in across the organization, and it took time, right? So I mean, you just have to state those expectations to the business that, listen, we're going to start this project now, but you may not see anything for a year from now because we have to architect the entire thing. So the data points that may not have...
One thing as well, though, it's not like that's what all the teams are working on. It's just a slow process over time, you know?
Right. So we had a preliminary vision in mind. We're going to, expose all the different product configurations, options, colors, chord types, by product, by vendor, by category, by website, right? And that's kind of like our first data layer that we stood up. And then obviously if there's any new variables and things like that that we feel are relevant for the model, right? Just based out of questions, discussions, customer feedback, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and architect it.
And to get additional IT investment
Not necessarily. I get your question about, sometimes older companies are, more than one platform typically, different disparate data systems not necessarily integrated or talking to each other, but just comes down to the BI group and prioritizing it and getting it done and kind of weaving it all together.
And in regard to the additional data sets necessary for the algorithms, if you think about it in terms of going back to how accurate is your model, the only thing that matters is if you're making money or saving money. So I'm a fan of something is better than nothing. as an example, I have like 3 more data sets that I want to build in to this problem order detection model that I don't currently have, and it's going to make the accuracy much, much better. That doesn't mean that I didn't release the algorithm. The algorithm's saving money right now, so having that strategic initiative and plan over time, can obviously improve, but definitely a fan of something over nothing.
The back?
Yeah, so I would say from an algorithmic side of things, we're going to rank things on effort and impact. For better or for worse, I would say we only work on things that matter, and quote unquote matter are going to be revenue generating or cost reducing. So this was kind of a, what we end up doing is that you have your effort and impact matrix, and then your colors of your dots are going to be, do we have the data, do we not have the data? So obviously things that are low to moderate effort, high impact, and green of I have data are going to be prioritized first, and this one was kind of at the top of the list.
How do you handle your unstructured data? So do you have natural language classifiers? Are you using Python to parse out, dictionaries of data? Or how do you handle it?
Yeah, so from an unclassified side of things, the only data that we currently are using a good bit would be our calls. So we're going text to call, voice to text through GCP. And then I have an expert on my team that is all on text mining. That's what he did his graduate school research in, and so that's mostly in Python.
Everything else is pretty flat, pretty relational. Yeah. Makes it easier.
So after we kind of decide on whether it's required or not, you go back and look at the one that's determine if there's a commonality or if there's any associated with those that would modify.
Yep. So actually, I'll go back. Oh yeah, hold on 1 second. Yep, right here. So if you look here, see the false negatives in the bottom right? So that's exactly what happens. So constantly, all of the false negatives are actually carved out into their own data set, and a clustering algorithm runs on the false negatives. So we can detect patterns of undiscovered items. And so that exactly what you just asked is exactly what happens.
Yep. And if you go back to the dashboard, right, we have the number, and we can drill into these orders and maybe kind of dissect the options and the choices and why the model didn't detect it.
Talk a little bit about getting justification for these types of projects from upper-level management. This seems like it may have been a slam dunk, or does your track record with prior projects, does that help in terms of this?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, as Dave was mentioning earlier, we work in an agile methodology. Everything goes through prioritization on 2-week sprint cadence. I would say probably a third of the team's time in general is focused on larger core, big rocks, so to say. Maybe actually, depending on the person, maybe an aggregate like 50% of the time. So we have, from the top level, our large strategic initiatives. Now, hopefully, the things that all of the teams are doing are going to fit within those larger strategic initiatives. Reducing remakes from all angles was a strategic initiative. So when we go back earlier in regard to the effort and impact matrix and do we have data, do we not have data, there's another dimension that says, okay, is this a strategic initiative that the organization has decided they want to go after? So, thinking about it from a data perspective of prioritization, you have all of these, Venn diagrams, and, this was a specific project that fit well. For the most part, I think we are all in the selling business. Unfortunately, if I want to, and time is money, and resources are money. So I think going back to the planning process of saying, hey, we're going to go after this, and having a bulletproof expectation of possibility in regard to either revenue generation or cost savings is paramount. And I think it's just on the leader of the function to sell it.
Talk a little bit about how you're bridging the gap between taking your model and predicting value in unseen data. Like what is the tech stack to do that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How are you guys using like data lab in order to predict the values on that unseen data? Like what is that tech stack?
What do you mean on the unseen data?
So you have a model, and let's say you want to predict the value. What are you using to actually do that?
Yeah, so depending upon the data set, there's lots of different data streams coming in. As an example, from like a click stream perspective, every time you click on the website, that data is going to fire through PubSub into BigQuery, algorithms running in Python and pumping back out. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I mean, the code from a UX perspective and just looking at it pretty is going to be data labs, yeah.
Anything else?
Have you had any kickback from trying to get the data from vendors, right? How are you handling that? Because I know in my own, I have an issue with that. Just, some vendors don't want to give full rights to all their data, right?
Sure. So this is not vendor-owned data, right? So these are orders that they're fulfilling through our blinds.com websites. So it's not necessarily proprietary information for the vendor. It's our data. They're coming through our portal and using our tools to sell their products. We're just fulfilling the orders through their vendors. Exactly. So it's our data. Yep. Matt?
Are you sharing data with vendors before this rollout? And then you guys, sort of a question, and if you guys captured the feedback from the vendors in this new approach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So how were we sharing before? We weren't.
We weren't.
We weren't. So it was just kind of like our supply chain team would provide feedback. But
Shane would call and fuss at them.
Yeah.
That was the data share.
that was the data. Yeah. How we're sharing it now is through package workbooks, right? We've kind of piloted a couple different solutions with separate site Tableau server, Citrix tokens, VPN access, things like that. But we've gotten our hands slapped a couple times from Home Depot security. So building out one of those solutions is the ultimate goal, right? Embedding it in some sort of vendor portal. But we've got some hurdles to jump before we get to that solution. So, all right.
All right. Thank you all very
Thank you
much.
guys. Appreciate it.